the other one. Bolton has managed to unite Republicans and Democrats against him. Republicans are angry over what Bolton says about President Trump in his new book. Democrats are angry that he didn't say it sooner, particularly during the House impeachment hearings. Well, joining me now is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, who, of course, oversaw the Trump impeachment hearings. Congressman Schiff, welcome back to Meet the Press. I want to start, first of all, happy Father's
Day to you and to my dad. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Let me start with what we saw over the last 48 hours with the Southern District of New York. Pete Williams is reporting that that they know of no motivation having to do with some other case, that this was simply the president wanting to do a favor for a golfing buddy who's currently at the SEC. Do you accept that explanation?
I can't accept that explanation given the pattern and practice of both the president in seeking to use the justice system to reward friends, punish enemies, protect people he likes, and Bill Barr's willingness to carry that water for the president. Also, if you look at Berman's statement himself, Berman apparently has the same skepticism. There's a reason why he included that passage in his statement when he was saying, "I'm not stepping down," that he wanted to ensure that these investigations continued, or words along those lines. So Berman clearly had a concern about why he was being pushed out. And given the firings of these inspector generals, given the way that Barr has sought to intervene in cases to help out people like Michael Flynn or Roger Stone, and to seek additional punishment for people like Michael Cohen, then you really have to question what's really at the basis of this Friday night attempted massacre, and now completed one.
Do you want to see, should we expect to see Mr. Berman in front of Congress in the next week or two?
I certainly hope that he will come and testify before Congress, and I know Chairman Nadler intends to investigate this, and he should. It's, I think the most disastrous management of the Justice Department in modern memory, and like so much of what we have seen in this administration, it doesn't come as a surprise anymore, but yet it's completely demoralizing to the people in the department and dangerous to the rule of law.
Have you read Mr. Bolton's book yet, Congressman Schiff?
I have not. I've certainly read the excerpts that have been published in the newspaper thus far, and there's a tremendous amount to be disturbed about the substance of them. I would put, frankly, at the top of the list the fact that the President of the United States was willing to change tariffs on China if only China would help him get reelected. Of course, this is a perfect echo of his misconduct with Ukraine. But more than that, we warned during the trial that you could only count on Donald Trump to do what's right for him, not what's right for the country. And John Bolton says that is exactly this president's pattern and practice, that he didn't see a significant national security or foreign policy decision made on any other basis than the president's personal or political reelection interest. And of course, that's a tragic and dangerous situation for the whole country when a president has that kind of myopic focus on what's right for him and is willing to sacrifice the national interest.
I know that you wanted to see Mr. Bolton testify. You wanted to see him do it voluntarily. You also, I remember you and I had a conversation before the impeachment trial began about the issue of Bolton and about why the House chose not to force the situation, because you thought it was better done in the Senate. Do you regret that decision now? Should you have fought harder to get Bolton to testify before you voted on the articles?
No, I think indeed our decision has been vindicated by the fact that we are still in court now over a year later trying to get McGahn to testify. Bolton said he would sue us if we subpoenaed him. We would still be trying to get John Bolton's testimony today. And given that the president was trying to cheat in the upcoming election, we couldn't afford to wait another year to get John Bolton to testify. But more than that, I think what we did is ratified by what we're hearing from the senators. We made the case when we were urging his testimony in the Senate that the senators would one day have to explain why they didn't want to hear from him when they had the opportunity. Well, they have now explained. Those that haven't run away from the camera have explained Trump is guilty. They found him guilty. The House proved him guilty, but they weren't prepared to do anything about it. And so we had the evidence to prove it. We did prove it. But nonetheless, what John Bolton has demonstrated, and I think to the length and degree that he indicts Donald Trump, he also indicts himself for cowardice and for greed. Because there were people who did come forward, people like Colonel Vindman and Fiona Hill, who risked their careers, and he lacked that basic courage and patriotism. It was only the greed that made him come forward in this book. Because remember, Chuck, what his lawyer was saying at the time was that Bolton might damage the presidency or he might violate his own oath, and that's why he needed to go to court. But apparently those things have given way to a book deal.
There is some damning allegations involving China, which you brought up, but there's also things in there involving Turkey, involving Saudi Arabia. These are a lot of things that are in the purview of the House Intelligence Committee. Do you plan on getting Ambassador Bolton to testify soon and go under oath with these allegations?
We haven't had a chance to read the book, as I mentioned, Chuck. When we do, and we expect we will within the next 24 to 48 hours, like the rest of the country, we will look at what allegations, like those involving Turkey and other countries, particularly involving China, need to be fleshed out and exposed to the light of day. And then we'll make our decisions. We do need, I think, to expose the length and breadth of this president's depravity and how much it is endangering the country. So those facts are going to need to come out, and we are discussing with the Speaker and my fellow chairs just how to do that.
Look, if you don't act now and you sort of wait to act and you wait to see what happens in November, is that too late? If you believe he has done impeachable acts with the Chinese government, can you really wait until after the election to put Bolton under oath to start the process?
I don't think we should wait if we conclude that there are important things that he says that need to be exposed to the public. The public needs to know exactly what they have in this president. A lot of it is not a surprise, but at the same time, exposure of this president's misconduct is the best way to protect the country. Congress can take steps to protect the country. Look, those comments that the president made when only the interpreter and President Xi were in the room, blessing the concentration camps of the Uyghurs, it's exactly why we want to know what he said to Putin when he's alone in the room with Putin, because he's dealing away our national security. He's dealing away the values of this country in secret in order to help himself. And that's just so destructive of everything that this country stands for.
Congressman Adam Schiff, I got to leave it there. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee will be watching in the next couple of days to see what you guys do next regarding Mr. Bolton. Appreciate you coming on, sharing your views, and again, happy Father's Day.
You too.
And before we go to break, I want to alert our viewers that John Bolton will be my guest right here next Sunday on Meet the Press. I hope.
John Bolton, the man that stood elbow to elbow with the president, that got frustrated with the president, and I'm not so sure if he quit or if it was forced upon him to resign. But the fact of the matter is, he let down the nation. And the way that he let down the nation is that there was a time that he could have spoken that it would have been much more effective in doing the right thing, versus now with his greed pertaining to a book deal coming forth and telling it all, supposedly it all. So you reach the point of damned if you do and damned if you don't in regards towards not only what the president has done and is being accused of doing, but you also reach the point of this man's credibility, because if he was truly working for the party, as far as we the people, he would have done the right thing in regards to his sworn duty that he had made to ever gotten to that position to begin with. So, you got the right arm not knowing what the left arm's doing. You got one accusing the other, the pot calling the kettle black, and it's just a twisted, upside down, corrupt mess whenever it comes to true patriotism for the benefit of we the people. It is so corrupt because John Bolton had that opportunity and blowed it during the time of the impeachment trials and the impeachment hearings. Those people that was putting their careers on the line was dependent upon Mr. John Bolton to come forward. And Mr. John Bolton, he basically said that he was not going to do it. But now later, since there's money on the table, now he's doing it. So you reach this state of each person cutting each person's throat, metaphorically, in a cutthroat industry like this, to the point that the whole thing is rotten all the way down to the core, beginning with the seat of the president. And whenever you have this type of corruption beginning at the seat, it is difficult to weed out the bad. You know, I find myself every day struggling in trying to overcome the ways of the flesh. I find myself every day struggling in being caring enough, loving enough, turning thy cheek and offering thy other, loving thy enemy, loving thy neighbor. It's an ongoing, evolving, maturing reality that if you are a true born-again Christian, there's going to be barriers and areas in your life that you're going to have to learn to work around or go over or to finally get through. Just as the Bible in the first 4 chapters of Revelation says that he would not put none other sin or none other burden upon to thee, to hold fast till he comes. He who shall overcometh will not be hurt of the second death. Whenever it talks about overcoming, that word overcoming can be multiplied and divided into 1,000 different areas whenever it comes to the true Christian being true to not only himself, but to those around him. Overcoming. And you know, whenever I first looked at that, identifying the fact of the seals being opened, I immediately went over to the fact of overcoming the fear of death, the fear of the first death, the fear of the first death. Overcoming the fear of the first death. And now, since I've gotten later into the ministry, 30 years later, I realized that that overcoming was not just the fear of the first death, because we're guaranteed not to have the fear of the second death if we're truly born again Christians, but it's the overcoming of the wickedness of sin, the lust of the eye, the thought of the mind, the corruption of the soul. And until we're willing to go to the core, and I'm talking about myself right now, until I'm willing to go to the core of where these things are happening in my life and identifying where my weaknesses and where my strengths are, I'm never ever going to be able to get my house in order, lining up my temple exactly the way that Christ taught for my temple to be aligned. You know, it's one thing to preach to others about hypocrisy. It's one thing to preach to others about people not being righteous. and not striving towards the ways of righteousness. And it's another thing for you yourself to be struggling with these same matters and not being willing to testify or to admit to your own wrongdoings. Because the Bible teaches that we must get the mote out of our own eyes before we're concerned or worried about getting the beam out of somebody else's eye. Once more, it goes back to the pot calling the kettle black up in the White House. Whenever you have a leader, a chief and commander, that is obviously not playing by the rules, by staying in the guidelines of the rails of where he should be in the political arena, not the spiritual arena. This man is not concerned about the spiritual arena the way that people like myself are worried about the spiritual arena. Just like I'm not worried about the political arena like he's worried about the political arena, because these are two different arenas. You've got one arena that basically is a self-righteous arena that supports the ways of man. And then you got the other arena that actually contradicts man, that only supports the things of God. And being torn between one versus the other can be very, very detrimental in the walk of spiritual maturity with a lot of Christians that struggle with the very same thing that I'm talking about, separating the two, learning to divide the two, that one thing is one thing and another thing is another thing. But I'm trying to compare the abilities being sworn in as a subservient for the people that Mr. John Bolton has let the American people down by having this type of knowledge that he could have used against the chief and commander, that would have been more enlightening for Congress to have made a better in-depth decision about the misconduct of our chief and commander. And it's proven that now, since some of the dust has settled, the smoke has settled, now all of a sudden, here comes John Bolton out with a book deal that's once more surrounding greed, prosperity, money, something to do with enhancing his own life over with the tell-all book. It's absolutely sickening from a patriotic political standpoint of seeing what's going on with the White House and various officials that have sworn to protect and to uphold our Constitution, the leader of the free world. It's absolutely mind-boggling and sickening to think that these people are wiggling and worming, squirming, defying, multiplying, and think that people such as ourselves can't see what's actually their true motives. If there's ever been a time that we as a Christian society here in America needed to remain upright, needed to remain committed, needed to pray for Old Glory, the red, white, and blue, it is in this day of trial and error that we're living in right now today. Because with us having the problems that we're having, This is more than just a constitutional crisis that we're facing. We're facing damnation towards one of the greatest known nations, the greatest known countries in the world, if we do not watch our P's and Q's. And our P's and Q's don't just begin and end starting with people such as myself, but our P's and Q's begins with the people that's on top, pertaining to we the people. Not I, John Bolton, that now decided that he wanted to come out with a tell-all book that maybe in his eye he decided that he was going to clear his consciousness. But could he not see that in our eyes that we was going to speculate towards what his true motive was? Towards basically being a traitor? A traitor to not just the president, but a traitor to the people. Because if there was ever a time that we needed John to be John, and to be that honest Mr. Bolton, it was during the time of the impeachment trials, the impeachment hearings. And he didn't step forth. And he even said that if they tried to get him to testify, that he would sue Congress. Being very, very defiant in his moves, not only then, but being very, very defiant now. So one such as myself has to ask the question, my God, whenever it comes to these people burning the candle on both ends, is there not no limit in how far these people are willing to stoop whenever it comes to showing their true colors? Because the colors that I'm looking at in behind these two gentlemen are red, white, and blue. The colors that have sacrificed for our freedoms that we have today here in America. But the colors that I'm starting to understand is the colors of yellow. A yellow belly coward. Somebody that wasn't willing to stand up and do the right thing then, but now confesses that he's standing up and doing the right thing now, and the whole time there's some sort of hidden agenda or hidden motive in behind him doing what he's doing. And as far as I'm concerned, the color of this "the" up here on top of this picture right here, which is basically gold or yellow, is the same color that you need to stamp on this man right here that has done what he has done for whatever reason that he's done it. I don't know if he's done it for greed. I don't know if he's done it to get back at this man. But the fact of the matter is, whenever people was relying upon to his honesty, his integrity, when people was solely relying upon for him to do the right thing, he done the wrong thing whenever it come to testify against this man. And now, basically 6 months later, once more, instead of him doing the right thing, now he chose again to do the wrong thing. As far as telling all. What has it prospered other than tearing down the fundamental value of our loyalty to we the people? What has it showed? What has been displayed here? We know Donald Trump is a scoundrel. We knew that he was a scoundrel basically from day one, whenever the people elected him into office. Regardless whether the people got him in there legitimately or illegitimately is debatable with the Democrat Party, beginning with Hillary Clinton. We knew that he was a scoundrel, but we didn't realize that John Bolton was a scoundrel. And you have to ask the question, how many others up there in the White House fit under the same criteria as John Bolton towards him being nothing but a scoundrel? And the people are tired of this, because this is the very thing that has disrupted the cart, the apple cart. This is the very thing that has put us where we are right now towards all these major protesting and all the corruption that's going on in various circles, in various arenas. And this is the very thing that is tearing our people, our government apart. What happened, Mr. Bolton, to the cliche that honesty is the best policy? If you knew these things before you come out with this book, how come you didn't stand up during the time of one of the greatest needs in America towards identifying the true colors of Mr. Trump? Now we're finding out the true colors of everybody, which are not the colors of red, white, and blue, but are the colors of a yellow belly scoundrel. A yellow belly scoundrel. Because you're not truthful to yourself, and you're not truthful to the oath that you sworn that you was going to protect, and you're not truthful to we the people. At least I can testify in my testimony, as shameful as it makes me feel, that Dennis, you have not reached your perfection state that lines up with the dynamics of the teachings of Christ yet. And as shameful as it is to admit that, I know the Bible says to confess your sins before the people. That way, if there's room for perfection, you can maybe be perfected in that perfected state that God requires for not just one of his messengers to be a part of, but for all his people to be a part of. And if you're not willing to confess your own sins about some of your inadequacies that you have, how in the world do you think you're ever going to be able to manage other people's inadequacies if you can't manage your own? That's the very thing that Jesus taught. He said to get the beam out of your own eye, or clean your own doorstep first before you try to worry about trying to clean somebody else's. Once more, that goes back to the cliche that honesty is in fact the best policy. And that's that way not only in the political arena, but it's that way more so in the spiritual arena. Because you don't think that God knows who we are? You don't think that God knows what our inadequacies are? You don't think God knows where we have failed him in and failed him at? Sure he does. Sure he does. But whenever you're on these men's platform that they're on, they're not only being examined by God, but they're being examined by man. The very people that put them in that power, in that position. That's the part that I don't think that they quite get. We're not a bunch of kindergartners down here. We may have been born at night, but it wasn't last night, Mr. Bowden. Or Mr. Donald Trump, sir. We've got eyes. We've got ears. We understand the why, the who, the what, the when, and the why. That's why we take things and decipher it. Tear it apart and look at it. Try to profile it. Try to figure it out. Because we're tired of being burnt and hurt and taken advantage of. Those that care about our future and our children's future and our children's children's future. Whenever you have this much at stake on the line, you darn right we're going to look at what you say. You darn right we're going to look at the reason why you said what you said, and when you said it, and why you said it. Because there's too much at stake here pertaining to a nation that has deviated from the core of the right thing. So whenever it comes to meeting the press, whenever it comes to we as a society, please, don't belittle us by trying to think that we're not capable of seeing through the who, the what, the when, and the why. When you have this many people, careers on the line, when you have this much garbage that has been displayed, when you have this much corruption and hypocrisy that now is obvious that the people can observe, analyze, dissect, interpret. It's time to do like Mr. Nixon done. And if you can't save yourself, which is obvious you're not going to be able to, at least bail out of the boat to where possibly you can save the boat. At least have the dignity about yourself to the point of sparing what little left dignity that you have. That way you can walk away from the arena and people will say, well, at least he done the right thing. And that's what they do when history looks at President Nixon. Because President Nixon realized that he had been cornered, and it was just a matter of time before his hypocrisy was going to become transparent in what that he had done for his own favor and not for the favor of the people. It has reached this pivotal point in history with Donald J. Trump. And not only his inadequacies, but others around him in coming clean and saving what little bit of dignity that you may have had of trying to rescue the rest of us rather than tear us all down into the same positions. Because whenever it comes to representing the people, this is not who we are, I would say to the leaders in China. This is not who we are to the people in South America pertaining to Honduras. This is not who we are pertaining to Argentina, Australia and Russia, India and Africa. This is not who we are to the rest of the world, is what I would say in proclaiming the truth. Nothing but the truth, the whole truth. So help us God. Meet the press. Sunday morning. June 2020. Coming from the Windmill Ministries, we just want to say good luck to all of us. Good luck to each and every one of us towards our own inadequacies in getting our own motes out of our own eyes, and then we can maybe see to get the beam out of our neighbor's eyes and out of our brothers and sisters' eyes. But the house cleaning begins at the first house, the White House. And if you're not willing to clean your own house, that begins at the White House, then we, as a society, could possibly be doomed. Thank you for listening. And once more, shalom. Hallelujah. 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 God be for us. God be with us. Hallelujah. To the risen Lamb. Father Abraham, Father Isaac, Father Jacob, Father Moses, and all the other prophets that are looking down upon the society even as I speak. May God the Father have mercy on all of our inadequacies, beginning with myself, in understanding, identifying, recognizing that without Him, once more, we are doomed. We want to thank you for being a part of the Windmill Ministries today. On Father's Day, wishing all of our fathers happy Father's Day. Thanks again, and shalom.